Hey everyone, my name is Sam. Thanks for checking out this video. If you get to the end and liked it, give it a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, and the bell notification button. Slightly different backdrop for those of you. I'm filming on the back of my house, like my special collection-y bookcases, because the front of my house is like pitch black. The weather is very weird, like a white side and a black side. It's like literally above my house where the line is. So we're gonna try it today. But these are the books that I read this week. So starting off, I picked up Dark of the West by Joanna Hathaway. I was really excited about this one because she is a Canadian author. They did a cover rebranding, and I saw the first cover and I had zero interest in picking it up. And then I saw this cover and picked it up. However, that being said, I feel like the first cover actually did match the actual book better than this cover, despite my dislike for it. It is a very, it promises on the back: a pilot raised in revolution, a princess raised in a palace, a world on the brink of war. It was supposed to have parallels with the world wars. I think in the end it was just very cheesy for me. Nothing about, I don't find that there was really much of the politics of the revolution being focused on. It was a lot of the romance, which I didn't mind. I didn't totally buy into it. The princess and, the different classes and all this stuff. It was interesting, but wasn't really exactly what I had been kind of promised with the blurb and the cover. I think the cover and the blurb match each other, but they don't actually match the story, which was kind of disappointing. That being said, I ended up giving this a 3 out of 5 stars. It's by no means a bad book. I am absolutely going to read the second book. I think I would just want to go, when I'm going into books that are going to be cheesy, I do need to make sure that I'm a mood reader. I need to know that going in. And this was very much about the romance and the class structure and the forbidden romances and all this sort of stuff. I think the family drama was quite interesting, but it seemed to lean more into the like a Kardashian sort of reality show feeling, because so much of the focus was on the romance. Whereas I think if they had focused a lot more on the politics and the revolution aspect of it, it would have lent more into like being social political fallout drama. Then I did a read, finally, of Sky Without Stars by Joanne Rendell. Joanne Rendell and Jessica Brody. This is book 1. It's supposed to be a 2-book series, I believe, The System Divine. At least that's what it is on Goodreads right now, anyways. But this is a Les Mis Lunar Chronicles retelling, and my god, that is that is such an accurate description of this book. It's not just slapping those, like, large, tags onto this book that will make people pick it up, and then you read it and you're like, what does that have to do with anything? No, this is so much there's oh my god, the names of everything, it's Les Mis honoring, and then it's like you take all of these characters and like, let's go to winter. Like it specifies Lunar Chronicles as a whole, but realistically this is about winter by Marissa Meyer. This is set in like on the moon in Luna, with Lavanna being batcrap crazy. And instead of reading it from Cinder and Winter and Cress's POVs, we're going to read it from the lower working classes POVs for being abused. And so we have multiple different perspectives in this. We have a variety of different classes, and one of the characters is a thief, and she is trying to survive without getting involved in government mandated working and all that sort of stuff, because she doesn't trust them. And she ends up, through a variety of different ways, being asked to spy on the governor general guy's nephew, who is a guard. And there is a terrorist organization, it kind of really does mimic like the French Revolution with the rebels. And this was just it's such a good book. I was concerned with the size of it, that it was just going to drag on, but when you look at the size of Winter from Lunar Chronicles, it's also a beast too when you compare it. And it never felt like a drag. Never once. My only thing was, I feel like it was a little bit slow to get started because it did keep switching between POVs, so it was a little difficult for me to grab onto the characters. I think they took a little bit to get developed, and for me to decide if I really want to get invested in this character. But honestly, everything was awesome. It felt like it was paying homage to a lot of these different things, like Lunar Chronicles and Les Mis, but not stealing things. It was still its own thing. And I am floored at how few people I've heard say anything about this, because I'm surprised this isn't massive with how big Lunar Chronicles was. And we still latch onto that series desperately. It's an amazing series though, justifiably. But If you loved the Lunar Chronicles, I would be floored if you didn't like this one. And it's interesting because when I've read Lunar Chronicles and I've seen Marissa Myers in interviews, she said herself that she couldn't have written Winter when she started the Lunar Chronicles. She just couldn't do that as an author, and she grew as an author. And you can see that as a reader that she really does, and it's a development plot. But this one is almost like we're starting at Winter and going to keep going. Like, it was really, really interesting, and the politics of this is really, really fleshed out and complicated. I really liked that. I am beyond excited to see where all of this rebels and the conflicts and the different like planets in the space, everything goes, and to see how much more like homage they pay to a lot of the things like Les Mis and the Lunar Chronicles in the next one. And this is a heavier space book. It's still not really, I don't think, a space opera, which I do find those kind of intimidating, but it's more, I think, on par with something like Illuminae, just more focused on politics rather than technology, if you know what I mean. I'm absolutely going to read the sequel. I'm absolutely picking up my own copy. The authors just released the title for the second book like a couple days ago, I think. I don't remember what it is now. So it is up on Goodreads, and I am beyond excited for this book. It lived up to the hype for me, absolutely, which says a lot when it's Les Mis and Lunar Chronicles. It did not disappoint, and I would highly recommend. Then I picked up The Invisible Library by Genevieve Cogman. If you remember my TBR video, I have never been like so excited for, no, that's not true. I have been, but I was insanely excited for this book. Her job is to go to all these different worlds and parallel universes to find copies of books so they can keep them in a library for like records. And I just love that concept of libraries being this like wealth of knowledge, and that is when, you know, corrupt governments, that's when they go after the libraries. And as soon as I see things like cutting back like the waste of libraries, I'm always like, oh, you're a bad guy. Like, that's never been done by a good person. So I was really curious about this. This one did fall a little flat for me, and it could be just because I hyped it up so much in my head. It did remind me a little bit of Strange Practice, which I read earlier at the beginning of this year, at the very end of last year. It reminded me of that, as well as a little bit of like the show The Librarians, which I love that show. I have to watch the last season. And it also had, I think, little parts of it that reminded me of things like Tilly and the Book Wanderers. So I think it had like little bits and pieces of other books that I liked, but it didn't really tie together properly in terms of characters for me. I don't care about the characters. Like, I wanted to get invested in this so bad, and I just didn't care about the character. I'm assuming one of the things is being set up for a romance. I just don't care about them at this point. And if this book is like 320 pages, and I got to the end, I don't care about these characters. They literally mean nothing to me. I don't think they were developed, or I just didn't get attached to them in any way. I don't think the twist at the end was particularly surprising. All of the betrayals were kind of obvious to me. So that was just a little bit kind of weird that I was like, you're supposed to be this like super genius librarian adventurer, and you didn't see this coming? Like, so that was kind of disappointing. So in the end, I gave it a 3.5 out of 5 stars. It wasn't terrible, but it just didn't live up to the hype for me. I will keep reading the series, though. I have the first 4 books, so hopefully I can grow attached to these characters. I just think that was a real big miss for an introduction of a series, that you need to get me attached to something. And the world is ever changing, and the library is cool, but that's not enough to attach me. You need to get me into these characters or their powers or something. And that didn't happen. I also picked up The Mighty Heart of Sunny St. James by Ashley Herring Blake, and this was definitely my favorite book of the week. She is going to be in the TBR and Beyond group as doing an author visit later this month. Her books always have LGBT rep in them, which is great, but she also always deals with difficult topics. Just like Ivy Aberdeen, the main character is kind of trying to figure out her sexuality. And I think when I look back now, The Mighty Heart of Sunny St. James title is kind of perfect. The main character's name is Sunny St. James. She has a guardian who's taken her in when her mother abandoned her at age 4 because of alcoholism. And the Mighty Heart of Mighty Heart of that title is because right at the beginning of the book, she gets a heart transplant at the age of 12. And the story is about her thinking, I have a new heart, this means a new life. You know, it's really, really heartbreaking, and I don't know that I can really say it because I think it's kind of a spoiler, but I think the whole process of she keeps thinking, I have a new heart so I can be a new me. And in the beginning, she, by no means at the fault of her guardians or her biological parents, she thinks that it's wrong for her to be curious about kissing girls and boys. So it was just interesting that she goes to this new life of being like, oh, I have a new heart, therefore I know that all the things that I didn't think was right in the past, I can change that. So sexuality is obviously something that comes up. And then she meets her friend Quinn, and there's just, oh, I love them. And then her guardian, Kate, is a little bit overprotective, kind of justifiably though. She had heart disease and then a heart transplant before hitting her, getting a period. And her guardian has this sort of boyfriend, and then all of a sudden her alcoholic mom comes back into the picture and wants to get to know her. And it's this weird juggling act of things from her old life coming up and then trying to figure out what she wants to do with her mother and how to keep her guardian, because her guardian, she wants to call her mom. So it's just this interesting, heartwarming, and kind of breaking book. It's got a very Ivy Aberdeen ending to a book, which I loved, and I'm really happy that I read this. Quinn has this like signature neon hair in the book too, which I loved, as you might not be able to tell. And this was again a library pickup, but this is going to be in my list of books that I want to eventually pick up a physical copy of my own and put it on my shelf beside Ivy Aberdeen. So 5 out of 5 stars. I would highly, highly recommend this book. It's fantastic, and it's Pride Month, so read books not just in YA and adult, but like kids when they're questioning themselves, and it can be from like picture books to like children's books to this middle grade section. And I think that's something that we need to understand, that people go through this process before they come out. And as someone who's cis straight, and I don't know that, I can't connect to that, but I can read about that and try to understand it. My friend Melanie made me read The Call by Pilar O'Gwelin, I think that's how you say it, which is definitely an Irish name. I thought this was going to be more of a horror, but I honestly don't know how to classify this. Honestly, I've just kind of been telling people it's like The Maze Runner, but with Irish folklore. I don't even know if it's actually pulled from Irish folklore. It's just very much steeped in like fairies, and it's specific to Ireland. So this whole thing is like all of a sudden Ireland gets cut off from the rest of the world. They don't totally know why. It just happens. And then people start literally being like pulled out of this world. They go to this world of basically like gremlin fairies, and they're there for 3 minutes and 4 seconds. And almost all of them, when they get brought back to the real world after those 3 minutes and 4 seconds, are dead and they're mutilated. And it's always in these teen ages. And if you come back, you're kind of made immune the way you would from like a disease. But most people don't come back, and if they do, they're mentally scarred. They've got issues. And so because of this, most people dying off in their teen ages, the population is declining, and then all of a sudden there's this book happens when all of a sudden a whole school gets wiped out. They're trying to figure out what exactly is going on, and they're training these kids at these schools to try and give them the best chance of survival. But the call, it comes without warning. All of a sudden they just disappear. The concept is really interesting. It's kind of dark. I think I liked it in the end. I'm not totally sure. I think I'm just confused as to what the heck to classify this as. Like, so I'm not totally sure what to do with it. I think I'll read the sequel though. I was interested enough in the ending because not everything's really wrapped up, and I really love the main character has survived when she was younger, but she had polio, so she is crippled, so she is walking around with crutches a lot. And there's this weird like dynamic between all of the kids, and there's cliques in there, and there's like kids trying to have like their own Knights at the Round Table set up, and some of the things, they're just weird and competitive. And it's kind of like the concept of like what happens if you raise people in like a Hunger Games scenario, basically, where it's like it's me or you. We all know that there's only going to be like 3 of us out of this whole year surviving. Yeah, so I ended up giving it 3.5 out of 5 stars. I think I'm gonna read the sequel, and yeah, it's just an odd book. And lastly, this week I read Blood and Sand by C.V. I keep wanting to say S. C.V. Wood. This is pitched as like a female Spartacus. I am a horrible human, and I've never watched Spartacus, so I can't comment on that. However, this is I don't want this to sound bad. It's the same thing as last week of like calling a book trashy. Like there is it's just a type of book. It doesn't mean like throw it in the garbage. It's just a kind of trashy book. This is a basic book, okay? Like and I made this kind of review on my Litsy of like, it's a basic book. That's not necessarily a bad thing though. Like we all, especially me, when the fall hits, I go full white girl. I put my hair up in a messy bun. I have pumpkin spice lattes always in my hands, and I wear Uggs, okay? Like that is, and yoga pants, but that's year round. So like that is kind of like what this book is, if that makes sense. It's historical. It's okay. Like The Valiant, I feel like The Valiant has a lot of politics in it, a lot of sister relationship building, a lot of betrayal, a lot of people trying to figure out this group dynamic. It's like taking that but removing all of that and just kind of having a heavier romance to it, which wasn't necessarily bad. It was just a very abrupt of like, oh, okay, they're in a romance, I guess. Okay. But the ending kind of threw me for a loop because it got more like political and like family based. So I don't know where book 2 is going to go. It's called like a Fire and Ash, I think it is. Actually, I think it says at the end, Fire and Ash. So I don't know when that's coming out, but I'm curious to see when that does come out. I think I will read it. The cover is god awful though, like horrific. I don't know what it really has to do with it. Again, doesn't match the inside of the main character is the last kind of warrior princess of, you know, a community that was kind of in and around Rome. They were attacked and her community was wiped out except for her. She's taken and sold as a slave, and she you know, is sold and given to one of the rich dudes kind of servants, and kind of used to manipulate him. But they do, you know, have a romance. But I really actually like some of the historical notes. I don't think it was super specific or super, it didn't really like have a lot of historical influences, if you know what I mean, but it did take place, like they have the big, like the Pompeii volcano eruption, and I think that's just like a very world famous one. I think that really, even if you're not a history reader, or someone with a background in history, you'll know like the Pompeii volcano, whereas I'm someone who I'm like, okay, but that's easy, like that's easy to just say like, oh, when we're going to travel to Pompeii. So I really wish there had been more of that, especially considering I think it kind of annoyed me because in the author note it says like graduated from some Vanderbilt University with a BA in English literature and European history. I'm like, but if you have a history background, like then this was really basic. You know what I mean? It's not bad by any means. I don't think it was anything special, but I don't think it was anything out of the normal realm of YA. And sometimes you just need a basic book. Like, I can't always read books as complex as Sky Without Stars. Like that, I just don't have the brain capacity for that. So this is like kind of a fun in between. And I like the concept of Rome and like Caesar and Pompeii and all this stuff. I like those time periods and those settings. So this is kind of like just a fun, trashy kind of read for me again. So in the end, I ended up giving it a 3.5 out of 5 stars, and I will absolutely pick up the sequel, but only at like Book Outlet or something like that. I don't think I'd pay full price for these books. So those are all the books that I read this week. I hope this video isn't too dark. It's, you know, I'm just dealing with nature, and I'm just happy we're not on fire. So those are the books that I read this week. I'll link them in the description down below, along with all my social media. If you follow me, I will follow you back, and make sure to check out the TBR and Beyond group for Ashley Herring Blake's visit. I'm so excited for that, and she's written a bunch of amazing books, and it's Pride Month, and this is a good time to definitely invest in those books.